This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. This week we've got a great video here about the subject of open relationships. And the title of this story is I Forced Open Our Marriage and Lost My Husband. Now let's get right into it because it's a very entertaining story. I think you're going to enjoy it. And it's also a very long story. So what I will do is interject my feedback as we go along. Now, right out of the gate, I want to give you my opinion on open relationships. What do I think of them? I believe they are a total scam. They are a scam primarily instigated by one partner in order to cover up an existing affair and or legitimize future cheating in a guilt-free way. From my observation, the long-term failure rate for such relationships is extremely high because, again, typically it's one partner that's driving it and that partner wants to cheat and the other partner isn't really on board with that type of relationship. So my advice to people out there, and again, this is just my opinion, is don't get bamboozled by this, okay? So let's get into this story. Now you can see here the original post was from April 3rd of 2021, and it's told by the woman in this case, this story. She says, I'm here to solicit suggestions on what I can do to save my marriage. Let me start by saying I've been married to my husband for 5 years, together for 7. For confidentiality, I'm going to refer to us as Jeff and Justine. We met in our second year of community college. I got a 2-year degree in office management, and Jeff went on to obtain a 4-year degree in business administration from a university that conducts remote classes at the community college. I'm 26 and Jeff is 27, so they must have gotten together when she was 19, he was 20. And we were planning on starting a family later this year. Our dream was to have 4 kids, ideally 2 boys and 2 girls. We had a very happy marriage and our 2 families loved both of us. Now, here's where I effed up royally, she says. I developed what some may call a work husband, but in my case, it was with a delivery driver for one of the big 3 organizations who makes deliveries to our office. Now, when somebody says they have a work spouse or a work wife or a work husband, it's somebody they have this close relationship with at work that goes beyond just a coworker. It's almost borderline like an emotional affair and oftentimes can be inappropriate. She says for confidentiality, let's call him Byron. Byron is 25 and single and has been delivering to my office for nearly 2 years now. From the first time we met, there was chemistry. Not anything romantic, mind you, so she says to us, but a chemistry. I can't describe it. I was drawn to him and we'd spend at least 10 minutes talking every time he made a delivery. I looked forward to seeing him and always made sure I was up front when it was time for his delivery. One day our conversation went further than normal. Byron said he had a personal question to ask me. He said it was very personal and didn't want me to be offended or to jeopardize our working relationship. I told him, of course not, you can ask me anything. Byron then told me, I feel a very strong attraction to you and wondered if you felt it too. I was taken back by his boldness and embarrassed. I said, give me a minute to compose myself, and then said, yes, definitely, I feel it too. Byron then said, now Byron, she probably should have called him Chad, because listen to what he says here. He says, if you weren't married, I would have asked you out a long time ago. I said thank you for the compliment. He left, and that was that. So you can see here that this relationship definitely has stepped over the line, and they are in an emotional affair and very likely have been for a long time. Now, an emotional affair is one where nothing physical has happened, but all the piece parts are there for something physical to happen. She says for the next week, we just made brief, awkward small talk when he came in to deliver packages. I was very concerned and felt guilty that I may have crossed a line with him. No, you did cross a line with him. At home, Jeff and I were enjoying married life. Let me state clearly, I have always been totally satisfied with Jeff as a lover, friend, and husband, and believe at the time he would have said the same thing about me. Now, the last story I did, the woman said the same thing. So when they're protesting like this and saying, let me get this clear, I was always satisfied with Jeff as a lover, that means I probably really wasn't, but I'm going to tell you that. She said, that being said, I foolishly started dreaming about how I could selfishly have both my loving husband and some kind of relationship with Byron beyond just our work conversations. No, what you wanted was you wanted Byron to be your lover, and you wanted Jeff to be your safe provider at home, your protector. Later, I discovered the slang term for this is a cake eater. And again, that's a cake eater is someone who basically has the best of both worlds. They have that home provider, that family member that takes care of them and takes care of all their emotional needs. And then they've got their passionate lover who they really have the strongest desires for. It's really disgusting, but that's what that means. I started doing research and came across articles on polyamory and open marriages. I thought they were ridiculous and disgusting and didn't pursue it further at the time. I also knew my husband would not go along with it, and even if he did, it would strain our marriage and I would be disowned by both families, which is something I did not want to happen. Weeks went by and my married life was going great, as always. But I kept thinking about making a connection with Byron. I started researching the subject again and came across a post online titled, It Doesn't Hurt to Ask. It was a blog post by a woman who claimed to be in a successful open marriage. In the blog, she discussed how she had a great marriage but wanted to explore a relationship with a man who she did volunteer work with. The blogger wrote that she just didn't know how to approach the subject with her husband without destroying their marriage. She claims to have had these feelings bottled up for over 2 years, and then one day when they were on a long drive, she just decided to ask him. To her surprise, he was very interested. Long story short, they opened their marriage and they both now have partners outside the marriage that they see 3 to 4 times per month. The blogger claimed they've been doing this for 4 years now and their marriage is stronger than ever and they both are happier than ever. Well, I would challenge that. I don't know their full situation, but I guarantee there's one partner that's way more happier than the other. And that's how most of these situations go. I became very intrigued with her story because that's exactly what I wanted, but was too afraid to ask my husband. Well, one day we were sitting around the house on a Sunday morning, browsing the web from our phones and talking casually, and I asked him, I just read this online post about open marriages. What is your opinion about them? He said, you mean where couples sleep with other people? I said, yes, what do you think of it? He said he thought it was disgusting and that people should just get divorced if they want to sleep around, and I agree with him. I told him it's really becoming popular here in the US and in many Western countries. Jeff's facial expression indicated he was just disgusted by the subject, so I quickly changed the subject. Based on his reaction, I plan to never bring up the subject again, as the last thing I wanted was to jeopardize our great marriage. A couple of weeks go by, and Jeff and I are cuddling in bed, high on love after just having fantastic S. I'm laying on his chest and can't see his face, and out of the blue, he asks, "Who did you have in mind when you brought up open marriages last week?" I was startled and got a pit in my stomach. I slowly raised my head and turned to look at him and said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" Jeff then said he did research that indicated if a woman even mentions an open relationship with her partner, she has, one, already cheated, or two, has someone on the string ready to go. I was again startled. No, scratch that. I was rattled to the core, and Jeff could see that. He said, "I know you too well. I can see you're hiding something, so be truthful." I went quiet, looked away, then told him that I had not cheated on him and would never cheat on him, but then went on to say that if we ever considered an open marriage, I have a work friend who I might consider. Jeff then said, "Tell me about this work friend." I then proceeded to tell him about Byron and our relationship up to this point, including what Byron had told me about his feelings. But I didn't disclose I had reciprocated the same feelings back to him. So again, she's keeping this information from her husband because she knows she is emotionally cheating. Jeff then said something that again rattled me to the core. He said, "You know, technically you've already cheated on me." I defiantly told him that I had not. And he said, "Yes, the relationship you have with this Byron guy borders on what is called an emotional affair." I had never heard the term before, and Jeff explained it to me. I was getting frustrated, and Jeff said, "Let's just stop talking about this now, as I have to get some sleep, as I have an early start tomorrow." He quickly fell asleep, but I couldn't sleep and instead got my phone and looked up emotional affairs and read several articles and postings about them. Jeff was right. What I had with Byron was very close to being an emotional affair. No, let me rephrase that, she says. It was a full-blown emotional affair. I felt terrible, like I had betrayed my husband. I couldn't sleep, so I got out of bed and went downstairs and made some tea. I ended up falling asleep on the couch somewhere around 4 a.m. and at about 6:45 a.m., Jeff kissed me, waking me up, saying he was leaving for work and that I needed to get going as it was almost 7 a.m. I gave him another kiss and told him I loved him as I always do, but this time I emphasized the gesture even more as my mind flashed with guilt over my attraction to Byron. Several more days go by, and again we were laying in bed after loving each other, and out of the blue, Jeff said he'd be willing to try the open marriage thing if I really wanted to. Now, I got to sit back here and ask, what's this Jeff up to? Well, we're going to find out. I again, she says, was rattled by this and asked, "Why are you bringing this up now?" He said he had been thinking about it and everything we discussed and thought we should do it now while we were young if it's something we want to do. I said I was interested but would never do anything to jeopardize our marriage and love, as he was the most important thing in my life. Jeff then said, "If our love bond is strong, it will withstand infidelity." I told him that a mutual open relationship is not considered infidelity because we'd both agree to it. He didn't say anything about that. Instead, he just said, "Consider our marriage to be open starting right now." I again was startled and told him to slow down. We need to set up ground rules. He said the only ground rules he wanted were One, we needed to announce when and whom we were going to sleep with in advance. And two, after sleeping with the person, we had to disclose the encounter to each other without giving gory details. And three, condoms must be used for all forms of S, no exceptions. I told him those stipulations are fine and that I'd like to add a couple of more points. Those being, we would keep our open marriage confidential, and a fifth one she added here, we promise each other these extramarital relationships would not destroy our marriage and we would remain together. Now, Jeff, her husband, says he could not agree to either of these things. Now, that should have sent her a message like, ooh, I don't want to go forward with this because he's saying he's not going to guarantee our relationship is going to remain if we get into this. She says, I asked why, and he just said, I don't and will not agree to these stipulations, and he didn't want to discuss it. I felt very uneasy about this, as this was totally out of character for Jeff, but I cuddled up to him and we fell asleep. My discussions with Jeff left me uneasy about the whole open relationship thing, like he had some ulterior motive. So for the next month, I did not pursue the open relationship and we lived our lives normally. During this time, I stayed distant from Byron at work, only having short, basic conversations with him about the weather and how busy he was and how busy I was and things like that. Then one day, Byron told me that he really missed our conversations and asked me what was wrong. I told him that I was busy here at the office and at home and just didn't have time to talk lately. In my head, I was thinking, should I tell him about my open marriage? I decided I would. And she says here, I wish I could go back and not do this. The office was not the appropriate place to have this conversation, so instead, I asked if he would like to meet for a drink after work today, and he said yes. We met at a local bar with outside patio seating since it was a warm early spring day. I told him about my recently opened marriage and came right out and asked him if he'd be interested in a relationship with me. He didn't hesitate and said yes. He said he's been waiting for me to come around and hasn't pushed out of respect, but said he had been having dreams about me for months now. Now listen to what she says next. She says, our talk throughout our meeting was mostly about S in nature. This was a Tuesday, and we decided we would meet tomorrow for our first encounter at his apartment right after work. So she's going to get right into this. And that I need to leave by 6:30 p.m. so I could get home to my husband, as he was my first priority. Now I'm going to challenge her here because I don't think she told this Byron that her husband was her first priority, but let's give her the benefit of the doubt. All right, she says, that night I went home and I fixed a great dinner for Jeff. And after dinner, I told him about my conversation and meeting with Byron today, and that we had a date set up for tomorrow after work at his place if he, Jeff, was still up for moving forward with our open marriage. I could tell Jeff was taken back, and he replied, yeah, okay. So you're going to meet him tomorrow? I said, yes, but we can still back out now as my main focus is you and us. He said, no, let's do this. We hugged, but I could feel the hug was stiff and distant. Not a normal hug, but I chalked it up to nerves. We didn't talk much that night as he was working in his office and I too had office work to do. We went to bed and I spooned with him and tried to initiate, but he said he was too tired and needed to get sleep. So she had all of these indications from him that he was not really on board with this, but he was going along with it, but yet she still proceeds. When I got up the next morning, Jeff had already left, and had sent me a text stating he had an early meeting and forgot to tell me about it. He said he'd see me tonight. This was not like him, but I just shrugged it off and moved forward with getting dressed and going to work. So she has all these indicators that these things are not like him, but she's just discounting them and moving forward with getting with this Byron you're going to see. I wore a very cute outfit that day, knowing right after work Byron and I would be meeting. Throughout the day, I was texting Jeff, but he didn't respond, and I again was going to cancel the date with Byron, which she says in capital letters here, which I wish to God I did. Then at 4:17 p.m., I got a text from Jeff saying he loved me and would see me tonight. I felt relieved and took this as a green light from him to move forward, because you really wanted to move forward. Let's face it, Justine, you wanted to move forward. Byron and I met and the S was great. Now she has a caveat here. She says, not quite to the satisfaction level I have with Jeff, and definitely no feelings of love, but very fulfilling, mostly because of the sheer lust and forbidden aspect of what we were doing. Now let me just pause here and give you my thoughts on love and lust. Lust is 100 times stronger than love. Love is a very passive emotion, where lust is a very active emotion. So when you hear people justifying, oh yeah, I had a sexual affair with someone, but there was no love involved, that doesn't mean anything, because what you want as a man is you want a woman to lust for you. The love should be a given, okay, if you're in a monogamous relationship, but you want the woman to lust for you. So if she's lusting for someone, let's say her lover, then she feels 100 times more emotion for that lover than she does in this case for her husband. So let me just put that out there, and that's my opinion. She said I left his place after about an hour and a half and got home just after 6:40 p.m. To my surprise, Jeff was not home yet. I was okay with this, as it gave me time to shower and put my clothes in the wash to remove Byron's cologne smell. I didn't want Jeff to be exposed to this. Though I felt fulfilled physically, I had a deep feeling of guilt, shame, and remorse, and just felt dirty. I had a real tug of war going on in my mind and was nervous. I decided that I would prepare a quick but great dinner for Jeff and lit candles to create a mood. I wanted to make sure that he knew how much I loved him, and that the physical affair with Byron meant absolutely nothing to me. Again here, Justine, you're trying to bamboozle us, saying that this affair with Byron meant absolutely nothing to you. None of us believe that. She says it was just physical and was nothing even close to the love and physical fulfillment I have with him. And I put this here, and I already gave my feedback on it, just a little earlier. Don't fall for this BS. If you have a cheating spouse, or a spouse that, has or had an FWB type relationship, one of these lust type relationships, don't fall for the BS that their feelings for you because they have love is way more than it is for a current or past lover. Don't buy that, because again, in my opinion, my strong opinion, lust is 100 times stronger than love. And what you want as a man from a woman is for her to lust for you. She said, I was hoping that we would end our night making love. And I put here, that is just nasty. Nasty. She was just with this Byron, and now she wants to come home when her husband comes home and get with him. She says here, I know some of you may think this is selfish and downright gross, but keep in mind condoms were used for everything I did with Byron, and no body fluids of any kind were exchanged. It doesn't matter. Justine, you were just with this other guy. Ugh. Well, hopefully you're all enjoying this video, and if you are, please hit that like button as it drives the video up on the algorithm and gets it exposed to more people out there. So let's go on with our story. At 7:30 p.m., Jeff still wasn't home, and I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. So I texted him stating I was home and had dinner waiting. I heard nothing from him. It was now 8:50 p.m., and I was getting worried. I kept calling him and leaving messages and sending texts. At around 9:30 p.m., I got a text from him stating, "Don't wait up, I'll be home late." I texted back asking where he was and who he was with, but he didn't text back. I was exhausted and fell asleep sometime after midnight. I was awoken by the sound of the shower in the spare bathroom running and got up to investigate. The door was locked, totally uncharacteristic for Jeff. So I knocked, but he didn't answer. Then 10 minutes or so later, Jeff emerges with a towel wrapped around him and said, "Hey, how was your night?" I said it was fine. He said, "Did you F Byron?" I told him, "Please don't say that," but then told him that yes, we were together. I then asked where he was, and he said he spent the night out at several bars and stayed out dancing. I asked who he was with, as I could smell perfume on his discarded clothes, and he told me that's not important as I didn't F her. I said, "Who is this her?" He said that since they didn't F, he didn't need to disclose this to me. Jeff never used the F word to me, so this language he had been using here had me very concerned. I then asked him why he showered in the guest bathroom, and he said that he'd be using the guest bedroom and bathroom until I had 2 STD tests taken. I was crushed by this and said, "What? This wasn't part of our rules. I made sure Byron used protection for everything we did." He says, "Have you never heard of oral HPV or oral herpes? I'm not getting within 6 feet of you until you get the all clear. Call it my version of social distancing." Now, this is Jeff telling her. I was very upset and crying, and I told Jeff I wanted to close the marriage as this was the last thing I wanted to happen. Jeff said, "No way, you got yours and I'm going to get mine." I was crying, and he just said he was going to bed as he had an early meeting and needed to rest. I stayed up most of the night crying my eyes out and eventually fell asleep on the couch. When I awoke, Jeff again had already slipped out. He had sent me a text stating, "Don't wait up for me." I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. I texted and left messages throughout the day, but he didn't respond. So this Jeff has already gone ice cold with her. I was sick and going insane that I had likely destroyed my marriage. You think so? We didn't have any packages that day, so I didn't see Byron. But I called him at 4:30 p.m. and asked if we can meet tonight. He said yes and said I sounded upset. I told him I was, but we'd discuss it when I got to his place. We met and I told him I wanted to end our relationship and that it was a big mistake as I love my husband and wanted only him. I explained the situation and he understood. But now listen to what she does next. She says the only thing he asked for was for one more encounter and that he'd never interact with me again other than for work purposes. So does she go along with it? I obliged, she says, and we had a short session. Nothing but straight missionary, which lasted less than 10 minutes. Afterwards, this Byron told her, "That was terrible. You just laid there like a tree trunk." I apologized and said this was all a big mistake and not his fault. So she loved her husband so much and she wanted to devote all her time to getting him back, but she still had to have another get together with this Byron. It's a bunch of total BS. She says, I got dressed and hugged him one final time and left. Before leaving, Byron said, I'll never understand women like you. I asked what he meant by that comment, and he just said nothing, no comment, with a look of complete disgust on his face. I quickly left and headed home, crying the entire drive. So Chad was upset that she wasn't going to continue to give him her body. How could I have been so stupid? I destroyed my marriage for what? For nothing at all. I thought I had to be the stupidest person in the world and again just felt dirty. Jeff didn't come home until 1 a.m. that night. I was sick knowing that I had single-handedly ruined my life. On Friday, Jeff did the same thing and left before I got up and sent me a text stating, don't wait up for me. So Jeff has totally moved away from her. This distance and coldness was crushing to my soul. I love spending time with my husband in the mornings, evenings, and weekends, preparing his meals, cuddling, taking walks after dinner, and just talking about stupid stuff. This was all gone, and I missed it so bad. So it's only a few days in, and she's already, absolutely regretting what she did because she can see that her marriage is never going to be the same. I texted Jeff and said I wanted to talk with him tomorrow morning, and he texted back and said, okay, as long as it's first thing, as he was leaving for the day. I responded back asking where he was going, but he didn't reply. He didn't get home until 1:30 a.m. I didn't say anything and just laid in bed crying. He again took a shower and just went straight to bed. I woke early to wait for Jeff to get up. He came into the kitchen at 7 a.m. and poured some orange juice. The vibe was very cold and emotionless. He made no eye contact and just sat down at the table with me and started looking at his phone. I got up and went over and plopped down on his lap and said, look at me. He looked away, but I said, look at me, and gently grabbed his face, looking into his brown eyes. I told him that I loved him with all my heart and that I made a bad decision. Not a bad mistake, a bad decision. I told him I was sorry and would do anything to regain his trust and love. He didn't say anything and just looked at me like I was insane. I asked him if he loved me and he said nothing. I said, Jeff, please answer me. He said he didn't know. I just started crying and said, I can make this right. He told me, I don't think you can. I then called him a bastard and said, you planned all this. You set me up to divorce me, didn't you? He said he didn't, but did admit as soon as I brought up the concept of an open marriage, he knew our marriage was likely over based on what he had read. And that's my feeling as well. If one partner brings up an open marriage, basically your marriage or your relationship, if you're living with someone or even just dating someone, that relationship is kaput. It's over. I then asked him why he didn't just shut me down and demand that I end all contact with Byron. He said, you can't force someone to be faithful. You either are or you're not, and you obviously are not a monogamous person. I just cried and told him I was, and to not throw us away. He said nothing, just got up and said he was leaving. I asked where he was going, and he said he'd be back after midnight. I then reminded him that tomorrow was Easter Sunday and we were scheduled to leave at 7 a.m. to drive to my parents' house. My family absolutely loves my husband, adores my husband, and we spend nearly every holiday with them as his parents now live in Florida. He told me that he wasn't going. I was shocked and devastated and asked him to please come with me, and he just coldly said no. I asked him why, what I was going to tell my parents, and he said he didn't care. Then said, just tell them the truth. I begged and pleaded with him to stay home with me, but he just got dressed, took a gym bag of clothes, and left the house. I am destroyed inside and feel totally deflated. She says, I want to ask the community here for any suggestions and steps I can take to save my marriage. I'd really like to hear from any people who have done something similar with open marriages and whether a couple can recover from such a betrayal. I'd really like to hear from people who have successfully reconciled after an open relationship. She says, thank you for reading my story. I'm going back to bed now to cry for the rest of the day. So that was her original post. And now, because this was a couple years ago, she's got a series of updates. First update, April 5th, 2021. So this was on, I guess, the Monday following that Easter Sunday. She said, I wanted to give everyone an update. First, I want to thank those of you who responded with feedback and support. It really helped me get through the last couple of days. There were a lot of people who rightfully criticized me and called me nasty names, but I deserve it, and I appreciate your feedback too. Easter Sunday and today have been very difficult days for me. Two of the worst days of my life. I drove to my parents' home, and when I arrived, the first thing they asked me was, where's Jeff? I lied and told them that he had an emergency at work and would not be able to make it. I told them this as I did not want to upset our family gathering. My family bought my story but grew suspicious as the day went on, as I was not texting or calling my husband like I normally do. To deflect their suspicion, I sent several fake texts to throw them off and acted like I received texts back from him and told everyone he was still busy at the office and would call me tomorrow. Truth is, he never called or texted me, not even to see if I arrived safely. So Jeff really doesn't care. This broke my heart. I planned to stay over at my parents' house and tell them about our marital problems on Monday. I dreaded doing so as I knew they were going to berate and hate me. Well, I told them this morning, and it went just as I predicted. They yelled, called me terrible names, said they didn't raise me like this, and a bunch of other things. They called my sister to join us, and she proceeded to ream me out too. I cried and told them I was sorry. I told them I know what I've done is terrible and that I have learned from this and will never make the mistake again in the future. I told them my sole focus for the foreseeable future is to win back the love and trust of Jeff. They, at the end, though they were very upset with me, they told me they love me and would pray that our marriage can be salvaged. Monday evening, I drove home. During the day, I called and texted Jeff, but he did not reply. When I arrived home, now listen to this, I found a note on the counter stating he had gone to Florida to visit his parents and would return on Sunday. She says, I felt so bad as we planned on going to visit them sometime in early May, and now because of me, that's not going to happen. I hate myself. That's all I've got to say for now. I'm just really depressed and sad. What scares me is I'm no longer crying. The hurt and remorse I feel is so deep inside me now. Tears are worthless. So that was her first update. Now we're going to go to her second update. And this is from nearly a year later. This is March 14th of 2022. So she says, it's been almost a year and I didn't plan on posting again, but there was such an outpouring of interest from the community, I decided to. Well, I have bad news and good news. First, the bad news. I am divorced. It was final back in December. In the end, Jeff decided he couldn't remain married to me after I was with another man. And I'm going to add my opinion here. I don't blame him. Once somebody has stepped out on a relationship, whether it's a man stepping out on his woman or a woman stepping out on her man, the relationship is over. And if they're married, it should end in divorce. And again, that's my opinion. Other people may have other opinions out there. He said he could never trust me again and was embarrassed to be seen in public with me. He feels divorcing gave him his masculinity back. I disagree, as he never lost his masculinity, and no one knows about my brief connection with Byron except for our families. But okay, whatever, she says. Now for the good news. No, strike that, the great news. Now listen to what goes on here. And I totally disagree with this. She said, Jeff and I started dating again last month. We got back together on Valentine's Day. So they just got divorced in December. And now here it is, 6 weeks later, and they're back together dating. She said, and it's been fantastic. We only see each other whenever he wants, which has been about once a week, but our passion level is off the charts, way higher than when we first got together 7 years ago. Now he's made it clear to me that this is only a physical thing and that we will never again be married, live together, or be a couple ever again. Well, let me just tell Jeff right now, what you're doing here, in my opinion, is a big mistake. You needed to make a clean break and move on with your life. And it may seem like, hey, now I've got, my ex-wife as a friends with benefits and I got the best of both worlds. But you can see, you're going to see here in a second, she's got other things on her mind and other plans for you, Jeff, that you're going to find out about. She says, I'm okay with this arrangement. Well, not really, but I'll take what I can get. My goal is to win back Jeff, and if I can't do that, I want to have his babies. Now, don't get the wrong idea. I would never baby trap him. I just would like to have children with this man. I've thought out how we could share custody and make this all work without being married. I know it sounds crazy, but I love him and don't want children with anyone else. I know doing so would likely jeopardize any potential relationship I might have with another man, she says, but I don't want anyone else but Jeff. Isn't it amazing how when they were married, she wanted to step out and have a lover on the side. But now that her husband has cut her off and divorced her, now all of a sudden the husband goes to the lust position in her life and she's going to do everything to satisfy him and get him back. It's just amazing the mindset that goes on inside the heads of some of these women. She says, that's all I have to share now, and I'll probably not post again unless something major happens, but I would love, love, love to get your feedback on my situation. Do you think I'm crazy for dating Jeff? Yes, I do. I think you're crazy, and I think Jeff is really crazy for dating you. She says, should I try to move on and find another love and start a family with that person instead? Yes, I would recommend that because, like you said, if you have a baby with this guy, with Jeff, and Jeff doesn't want to get married to you and just continues to use you as a friends with benefit, then you're going to jeopardize any future relationship you may have with another man if that's what you want. And the same thing for Jeff. If Jeff decides, yeah, I'd like to have a baby. If you have a baby with this Justine, Jeff, you're going to be tied to her for at least 18, make that 20, 25 years at least. So if you want to go out and establish a family at some time and have a marriage or, a tight monogamous relationship with another woman, you're going to be tethered to this Justine forever. And do you really want to do that, knowing what you know of this person? She says here, P.S. Byron is not an option and never was. You see how she's trying to distance herself from this Byron? She says, he was just a bad decision I made and will never make again. She says, thanks and have a great St. Patty's Day, everyone. So that's the story. And again, there's a couple lessons here. Number one, open relationships are a total scam. Don't get bamboozled into an open relationship. And number two, the second lesson I really want you to draw from this is lust is many times stronger than love. As a man, you want a woman to lust for you. The love is a given. Like I said before, love is a given. You should have that love, but a woman needs to be lusting for you. If she's lusting for someone else, then guess what? You need to move on. And I would say the same thing to a woman. Your husband or your boyfriend or your fiance, they need to be lusting for you. They should not be lusting for someone else. So that's the story. Let me know what you think about this. What do you think about these open marriages and open relationships? Have you ever been in one? Have you ever known anyone to have been in one? And have they worked? How have they gone? What do you think about this story? How this guy handled it? What do you think about this guy getting back with his wife and basically having an FWB relationship with her? Let me know what your thoughts are on this. And if you like this video, please be sure to like it because, again, as I said before, it moves it up on the algorithm and it gets more views. Please share this video and subscribe to this great channel, and I will talk to you on the next one.